he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, one day my goal is to coach to the point where you are as good as you are to where other companies want to steal you away. My goal is that you want to stay here, but inevitably, if I do my job, you are going to fast track into other opportunities at some point in the future." And I think it takes a certain individual to be confident in themselves and also confident in what they're doing to know, hey, I'm here to coach and grow people. And if I'm great at what I do, they're going to find great things for themselves.
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Creasa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
Hey there, friend. It's Michael Creasa here, your host at Builder Straight Talk, and welcome. This week, I had the pleasure of spending time having a great conversation with a gentleman by the name of Jordan Brown, and he's with Graham Hart Homes from the big state of Texas. And what was so much fun about this conversation, the two of us just hit it off instantly, and it was like two long-lost friends bumping into one another at a pub, having a beer, and catching up on life from where we left off. It was brilliant. Now, his superpower is that he can take a bunch of people and hone their skills to become an award-winning sales team. So much so with Graham Hart Homes, he's taken them to the point now where they're going to start doing more than 100 homes a year in sales. Not bad, 100 homes a year. And some of the stuff we'll talk about is CRMs and how to create that winning culture, what works, what doesn't work in this wacky marketplace, and so much more. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation as much as I did putting it together. And speaking of enjoy, pretty please, I would enjoy nothing more than if you could take your mouse, subscribe, like, and share. Let me repeat that. Subscribe, like, and share. It's that little effort on your part that will make such a big difference, helping us get the podcast through the algorithms so more people can see it. So once again, subscribe, like, and share. So without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Jordan Brown of Graham Hart Homes. Mr. Jordan Brown, I have to say, I'm excited to have you on the call today. And a gracious Canadian welcome. Welcome to the call.
Oh, well, thank you for that, Michael. It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, what the listeners don't know or the viewers don't know is we've had, a pre-call where we kind of get to know each other. I call it the meet and greet. And I just found your story is fascinating. Your energy is just kind of off the charts. And we were connected by a mutual friend, Sherry Morton of Shared Drive. Kind of neat that her name is in the name of the company. And I just knew great things were going to come just because of that, because when you associate with great people, great things happen.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I am very blessed to have some wonderful people in my life, Sherry being one of them. And yeah, she's great people.
Well, let's start unpacking this story, young man, because right now you're in the command center at Graham Hart Homes. But before we go down that road, what was life like before you became a builder? Like, was it something that was always in the forefront that you were going to end up in construction versus being a cowboy, a lawyer, or selling ice cream at the local shop?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's take it way back for a few minutes, Michael. So, quick answer, no. This was not on the forefront of what I was looking to do. It's Texas Christian University, go Frogs, quick shout out. That brought me out to Texas from Sacramento. So my whole family is all spread out across Northern California, still are. When I graduated high school, I came out to TCU to really pursue communications, business marketing, and really go down that pathway. Really fell in love with communications and ended up double majoring in sociology, different story. But I signed up for a whole bunch of interviews my senior year, honestly, just to get practice and being in a scenario where, okay, I don't know if I'm really interested in these jobs. It was a little bit early, but that way I could get used to the different questions that were being asked of me, get comfortable in that environment. And long story short, one of them happened to be Pulte Homes. So this was in 2005 when a lot of the big nationals were interviewing heavily out of colleges, at least in Dallas, Fort Worth. And so ended up having an interview with Pulte. Really, really enjoyed that interview. And I got a call back that I was not anticipating. And again, knowing really nothing about single family residential and home building, the position was a junior sales associate and, onboarding for a training role through sales, and took the leap and honestly, I've never looked back. I have been so just on fire and passionate about this industry after jumping in and learning. And to credit of Pulte, they had such a fantastic training, and onboarding experience at the time. I'm sure they still do. And I spent the first 3 years there with them, jumped over to Meritage Homes from there, spent some time with K. Homes, and about 2 years ago, jumped on with Graham Hart Home Builders. So 15 years of new home sales in the chair, spent the last 5 years in, a couple of different sales leadership opportunities. First an area sales manager and the latest director of sales and marketing with Graham Hart. So that's how all of this kind of came to be. And along the way, met and fell in love with a powerhouse of a woman, my wife, Becca. And we have three daughters at all different seasons of life right now, which is just fascinating in itself. So they keep us energetic and alive and just amidst all of the things that come with being a girl dad. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Oh man, Jordan, I think we should just cut it right here. I don't think it's going to get any better. It's like, okay. Let me just rewind. There were two things that you said here that really just kind of prompted a question. Number one is the fact that you got hired with no experience. Now, we'll get into this further on in the conversation because now that you're in charge of sales, like
Yeah.
that is your function. You're hiring people.
Mhm.
So the question would be, is there an advantage to hiring somebody that has no experience because they become in essence like a mold of clay? It's like Michelangelo
Yeah, sure.
who saw David in the stone and all he had to do was chip off the pieces.
Mhm.
Is there an advantage to hiring somebody like that as opposed to a seasoned veteran that already has the training?
I love this question because yes, I find myself in that situation and I found myself as a candidate coming in originally as, okay, how do you get a job in this industry when you don't have an experience? And how do you get the experience when they're not hiring unless you have experience, right? That's the age old question. But, to that point as a sales leader now and hiring on and building a culture and a team, it's a little bit of yes and no. I love bringing in fresh, new energy of folks that you don't necessarily have to untrain certain habits or things that they've learned along the way at different builders in the space, and nothing negative to different training, different, sales presentation styles, but there's some things out there that you can learn as bad habits and not necessarily from training, but just life experience in general that you learn out in the field. But I like pairing someone who has little to no experience with, the tenured seasoned veterans who are just very sharp. They have the craft down pat and they have it. They're almost surgical with, how they operate and being able to pair them two together where, the seasoned veteran can really pour into the person who's new into the industry. There is such a really positive dynamic to have that energy bring in. It's like, it's a silly metaphor, but we have a dog, Zoe, and she's a Bernedoodle. She's 4 years old and we have kind of thought about, hey, do we bring a puppy into her life, to keep her fun and energetic and running around the house and having partnership. And it's kind of that same vibe to where, hey, the new person in the seat, hopefully they appreciate being able to learn and draw from as much life experience as the seasoned veteran has there in the chair. And vice versa, bringing new shoot, technology, AI, fresh ideas coming out of college or maybe the industry that they came in from before, they're bringing to the table that maybe the person who's a 20-year veteran never has thought of, doesn't know how to utilize. And for the person who wants to keep their tools sharp, they lean into that. And that's necessary in this industry.
I think there's that old adage that if you don't know it, you become a teacher. Like if you're not good at it, you become a teacher. And I push back at that because once upon a time I was a supply teacher. But what I'm thinking is when you can teach something, you actually own it because you have to be able to convey it, right? So it's even better that you're well versed in the thing, that you have
Yeah.
got the skill set and you can teach it. This harkens back to an interview that I did with a builder in California, and when he was looking for a project manager. So he did it begrudgingly because he was in the OR. He had just suffered a heart attack. And then God literally spoke to him in the face and said, there's probably a better way to be doing business, young man.
Yeah.
29 years old, he's looking at his first heart attack. And it's because he was doing everything. and they're averaging it's about 800 doors a year. And he realized I've got to systematize the business. I got to start pulling in the right people. So he did what every developer did. He put out ads, went through resumes, and everybody looks good on paper. That's why we have toilet paper. Everything looks good on paper. But what he found was the people that worked out the best were the ones that had a willingness to learn,
Mhm.
that were excited about the job and would listen. And when he put those 3 together, experience didn't matter because he wanted to mold them
Mhm.
in his culture, in the way they did things at his company. And what he found was that they grew like literally like weeds, water them and they would spread. Then he had a project manager that was indoctrinated in his culture in a good way that he could then set loose, if you will, that when he went to hire the next PM, this guy was responsible for training him, and it became a daisy chain all the way down the
Yeah.
line.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things I love watching in real time is, let's say you have a seasoned veteran and you give them the opportunity to be a mentor and onboard, someone from outside of the industry. In a sense, it really kind of shakes the cobwebs, some things that they are coaching to and teaching this person who's in their office that, oh gosh, I haven't been doing that. Or this is something that I really love about our industry, and they pour into that individual. And then the other side, it's when you've been in the industry for a while, it's one of those things of, I've probably forgotten more than you've learned in terms of what to do. And that's one of the reasons why I love, training, always training is I'll sit in a training or a leadership coaching session and say, oh my goodness, I used to do that. And it was fantastic. And I don't know what happened, but I don't do that anymore. And I need to go ahead and reel that back into my either sales presentation or how I manage up, to executive leadership or really just interact with fellows that are here in the corporate office or out in the field. And so there's a strength to that, when you roll it out.
This is gonna be kind of a long-winded question, and it kind of follows an archetype, a story archetype, and you're probably familiar with it. It's used in Westerns all the time, where there's a city or town under siege, there's some evil or something happening, and the lone stranger rides into town.
Hmm.
And his job is to confront the evil, puts everything back in order. But the thing is, he can't stay. For whatever reason, he cannot stay in the paradise he's created because of a troubled past, but whatever that is.
Yeah.
And so he has to move on to the next town. Coming back with this, you've been jumping from one company to the other. Is it because of a troubled past? Have you got a burr in your saddle? What is it that's making you leapfrog to ultimately where you are today?
Last jump was just opportunity. I was with K Hovnanian Homes for 13 years. And quite frankly, I was not looking to leave. I thought I would end my career there as far as I was concerned. Loved it, loved the people that I worked with, still do. We talk every now and then, and we're in such, just like any industry, such a small industry, you see each other. Like the International Builder Show that's coming up, it's like a big family reunion, with everybody in the industry that I get to see every year. But spent 13 years with them as a salesperson. Prior to that, I was at Meritage and I happened to just be recruited away from a competitor who was, shopping sales folks out in the field. And I happened to be one of the people that he came across. And so it's really just kind of opportunity after opportunity that presented itself. And it was a struggle for me. I'm loyal to a fault. I will say that out loud and I will say that, just very directly. It took a really long time, especially from leaving Chaos Manian, to say, is this something I really want to do? Because I loved my trajectory. Again, I loved who I was working with. Such a great company to work with. But I had an opportunity with an old division president who was here at Graham Hart Home Builder to sit down and say, hey, what does this look like? We're looking for someone to lead our sales and marketing efforts. Graham Hart Home Builder, up until about 2 years ago, we're 30 years in the industry. So 28 years, Graham Hart has really built a reputation in the Colleyville, North Fort Worth marketplace of being a small kind of family run custom luxury builder where we do some really neat, distinct things. And we've built a reputation around that. Until 2 years ago, we were very comfortable being, hey, this is who we want to be as a builder. But we had the opportunity to start saying, hey, maybe we want to scale up. How do we bring a production run or an element into this company? And it really starts with, bringing folks in who bring that experience with them to the table. Our owner, Sean Goff, love him to death. He brings so much experience and family experience to new home construction and custom sales. He approached my division president, David. He came on 3 years before I did. And then David reached out to myself to say, hey, how do we build a culture of high achievement, drive, accountability, but also start really scaling up unit count, revenue, and everything else that comes along with it. But here's the kicker: keeping the same culture and feel of the company. Because again, you can work years and years and years to put it where it needs to be and where you're comfortable with that. It takes 2 seconds to lose it. And so, how do we be very, very conscientious of growing and growing at the right pace, but remaining true to our values and what our really our loyal homeowners have gotten to know us as? And so that's where we're at today.
When I think of scaling, when a company's at that point in its evolution that it wants to grow, that growth is also determined on, as you said, the people that are part of the company, because you want to instill that growth, that vision in them. It kind of reminds me of, I'm going to say about 7 months ago, I'm at the grocery store and there's this aloe vera plant, a sickly looking thing in its little pot. And I don't know if it was calling to me or what the deal was, but I picked it up, I bought it, I bring it home. First thing I do is I take it out of that measly little thing that it's in and I put it in a nicer pot. Give it about a month or so and this thing starts to bloom. Like literally it's flowering, it's blooming, and it's getting crowded within that pot. So I get a bigger pot, I transplant it, and lo and behold, the bigger the pot, the bigger the plant because it wants to fill that space. Do you think part of your vision then and what you're doing as the sales manager and the company culture is you want to provide that soil, tacky metaphor, I know, for your people to grow? Because as they grow, the company grows.
Yeah. And I'll say this: I've got to give credit to one of my old sales leaders, Chris Hartley, just such an incredible guy. One of the things that he pulled me aside and said while I started my journey as an area sales manager, and I try to keep this with myself on, really the mentality of how I coach to the team is, he said, hey, one day my goal is to coach to the point where you are as good as you are to where other companies want to steal you away. My goal is that you want to stay here, but inevitably, if I do my job, you are going to fast track into other opportunities at some point in the future. And I think it takes, a certain individual to be confident in themselves and also confident in what they're doing to know, hey, I'm here to coach and grow people. And if I'm great at what I do, they're going to find great things for themselves. That's kind of the same thought process I take with my sales team and my marketing team is, hey, I really want to pour into you to the point where you look very appetizing to other companies that are out there, but I hope you stay. Right. And I think if you're in it for non selfish, egotistical reasons, and you care about the person that you're working with and you're going about it in that fashion, that I think makes all the difference in the world.
If I put this in perspective as a real estate broker, so I've been in this game for 30 years since I think more than that, 1989 is when I got my real estate license. And I've been a coach, I've been a trainer, speaker, like I've worn all the hats. And every time I try to leave real estate, it's like an ex-girlfriend. It keeps pulling me back into
Yeah.
the equation, no matter how hard I try. And here I am, my next, version of me, if you will, hosting a podcast here for Sound Capital, which is just such a cool friggin' ride. Like the smile on my face is akin to what you feel when you go to work every morning at Graham Hart. It's the same thing, like right place, right time, right people.
Yeah.
Right. And so is part of what you're doing, and I know you have to facilitate the growth that we talked about, but I think a good manager, a good trainer realizes that people will stay or they'll leave because of the management.
Mhm.
So you as the head of sales, they are going to stay, they will walk through fire because of you. Now, the company up the street may be offering a few bucks more, whatever that package is, But by and large, people don't leave because of money. They leave because of the culture, or there's no fit, or they don't feel like they have a seat on the bus. Is that fair to say?
I would agree. Yeah. I've lived by that and I've learned my lessons, with that in mind as well. Big thing here is, how do you communicate with your team? Is it clear? Is it concise? Do you hold folks accountable? Are you passionate? Do they see the energy from you? And transparency is really big around here. I make that a big point to say, hey, this is what we're doing, but I also want you to understand why we're doing it. So that way you can, number one, buy into it. I need to make sure that you feel comfortable with what we're doing and that you can go out and project the why as well. And so when you're out, say a salesperson in the field, and you're in your model home and you are passionate about what we do as a builder and why we do it the way that we do it, you're inevitably going to get questions from the prospect in front of you. Hey, what makes you different from the builder across the street, or directly next door? And you've got to be able to own that, and live it, breathe it, and trust it. And so that only comes with clear communication and also transparency.
I want to frame this in a way that the production builders that are listening into this that have a sales team, you've gone from being a salesperson, like you were a top performing salesperson. Now you're leading the team. What are some of the things that you've learned along the way that other production builders that are putting together a sales team could glean from your experience?
Oh, man, that's such a great question.
First of all, you'd think I do this for a living.
Yeah, I know. Just going out of nowhere with this. No, it all starts in the interview. And then I guess it depends. Let me backtrack. It starts with, okay, are you coming in as a new leader to an existing team? I don't need to just make it about sales, but really any team that you're leading. Or are we talking about interviewing someone? But bottom line is it all starts with the very first set of expectations. Are you being very clear in terms of what you expect? Are you asking great questions of the team on what they expect of you? And then you can really find out a lot in terms of what that dynamic is going to look like. But I'm just, again, from my experience from being a salesperson and reporting to and watching and being trained by, other sales leaders in the industry, you learn some great things. You learn some things that you say, "Ooh, I don't want to do that if I ever get the opportunity to do that someday, for better or for worse." And so I think that molds you from a lot of your field experience, from what you bring to the table and what you want to be able to deliver to your team, and also what you don't want to deliver to your team to keep them, all meshed and working together so you can all run at the same direction.
Let's take what you've implemented in sales with your team. And let's just go back a step. Give us a bit of the Graham Hart story, and that can kind of set the stage. And then let's layer on top of that what you've been able to accomplish since you came in. And it's more than, oh, we have a new refrigerator and a Coke machine. You've actually helped them with the scaling process. So let's go back to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about the company
Yeah.
and then the evolution that to where it is today.
Okay, sure. So Sean Goff, our owner, he actually worked with his father at Goff Homes here locally in Dallas, Fort Worth for a long time growing up. And so he peeled off and created his own company, Graham Hart Home Builder, in 1995. Based out of Colleyville, Texas. That's where we're here in this beautiful corporate office, right in the heart of Colleyville. And we've always been right here. And so it was kind of a local homegrown builder. Sean, it is very, very important to him to help others achieve. That's been the mantra, not only in our own employees, but man, he is voraciously a big cheerleader for the homeowners who decide Graham Hart Home Builder is going to be their builder of choice. So not only during the construction process, but long, long afterward, in terms of while they're living in their home. We had an opportunity to, help the family into a new home about 3 months ago, and this was their third Graham Hart home. So while I was thinking about, hey, do I really want to jump away and jump with Graham Hart? That was fascinating to be able to see and hear. And Sean's such a great storyteller. He's one to sit you down and tell you the history of the company. And it's just really neat to be able to listen to because number one, there's still a lot of family who work for the company, very tight knit company. And Graham Hart, up until 2 years ago, like I said, was very comfortable doing very localized business, build on your own lot. custom, and kind of dabbled a little bit into, hey, let's offer a couple of floor plans. But the company had never really ran at larger scale opportunities, i.e., big master plan communities with larger national developers, where some of the big guys, play around in that playground. So at that point, when I was able to onboard and come in, it was so much fun because working for a smaller builder, it's easier to pivot very quickly. And because you have the support of those who just hired you on, hey, let's sit down and have a very real conversation about who we are today, who we've been in the past, but where do we want to go? And how quickly do we want to get there? We had an opportunity to bring in HubSpot CRM. That was a major tool on set for our sales team. We had a CRM prior, but it just wasn't a system that it played well with construction services and purchasing, but it was kind of an afterthought as a sales CRM. And so we peeled away from that, brought in HubSpot. We very quickly partnered with a well-known company called Do You Convert. They work with massive builders across the United States, have a lot of respect for them. And so when I had the opportunity to sit down and say, hey, how are we going to grow our marketing side, grow our visibility, expand our website, do a lot of things that this company has never had the opportunity to do before. Do You Convert was an obvious decision for us. And so we ran at that very quickly. And they helped partner to, go through, our brand book and say, hey, this is who we are. How do we need to expand culture and visibility? And then to your question, hey, from large national builders, there are some really well vetted operational systems that help with efficiency. We brought in a lot of that, all the way from, gosh, different, addenda that we're going to utilize with our purchase agreements to, dress code. Yeah, just little things, but all kind of build up to, okay, brand profile. Who does Graham Hart want to be? As we spent time doing that, we were able to roll out new processes and help, amongst all of the different departments. And so everyone was cheerleading that on because once you jump out of your silo and, hey, if you can help construction services, if you can help the production managers out in the field do their jobs better, and, your sales team interacts better with the construction team as a unified team, things get a lot more efficient and more cohesive.
Let me jump in here for a sec. The question that comes to mind, Jordan, it's a new website, almost like a new brand, like a completely new brand image is what you're doing.
Hmm.
You guys are gearing up for battle.
Yeah.
What's that pivotal moment? Because you were a custom builder and
Hmm.
now you're looking at the great sea of opportunity to get into production.
Yes.
What was that turning point, or what was that, you want to call it an aha moment, where they realized this is something we needed to embrace? What was it out of, I don't want to say desperation, but the need to grow?
Yeah.
Because we want to scale and we can't do that doing custom, because
Hmm.
there are franchises like LR Homes comes to mind,
Hmm.
that they have a franchise built on guys that are doing custom and
Yeah.
doing really well. What was that moment, that pinnacle moment that made you guys say, we're going this way?
Yeah, sure. So at first it was a, hey, let's dabble in this to see if we can grow legs, and land some relationships because Graham Hart Home Builder at the time, it's, let's use the metaphor of, hey, we were the kid at the little kids table and we were trying to get to the grown-ups table when it came to developer relationships and, the stable of builders that a lot of the developers always went to first with a big development coming online. How do we land those developer relationships and partner with other builders larger in scale to go into some of these neighborhoods instead of, Graham Hart, we can self develop and we have in the past. And so, where we might take a look at a cul-de-sac with 14 home sites and say, yeah, we can self-develop that. That's great. That's going to add to our bottom line. And at the time, that may have been 10 to 12% unit count of our year, where big nationals would look at it and turn their nose up to it and say, that's not worth our time. We're going to be spinning neighborhoods too fast. And we could do that. So it all started for us where our director of land acquisitions, Andy, brought in some really great relationships and we were given an opportunity to go into two communities with land and a runway, a lot further down into 2027, 2028, Whereas we were only looking a year out. Now we're looking 2 to 3 years out with how much land and opportunity we have in front of us. That's where it started to become real and say, okay, how are we going to build the capital infrastructure that it's going to take, earnest money requirements to really run at this if we want to run at this properly? Banking relationships, because all of that has to scale up at the same time on the front end, where it can take sometimes 18 to 24 months to develop a community and you're not seeing ROI until maybe, 2 years out or further. That's where it really became real, Michael, is holy cow, we have this opportunity to greenlight this if we want to. Are we doing this? Yes, we're doing this. Okay, we're all in. Run at it.
You brought up an interesting point there about the capitalization because you need money to be able to do this thing. What is it that you look at? Let me go back a step. When you're looking at a potential build, right? A new build, are you using private money? Are you using house money? Is it banks? Is it hard cash? What is it? And then what determines the route that you're going to take with the project that you want to go on?
Yeah, great question. So it's a combination of both. We have a lot of private cash. Sean, to his credit, 30 years in business in a localized market, he has a tremendous amount of relationships that have seen Graham Hart know and trust, the history of the company. And so there's a lot of private cash there. There is also banking relationships that we've been able to lean into and say, great, this is wonderful. However, as we scale up units in homes that we need to get out of the ground, we need a larger cap in terms of being able to get those homes out of the ground and land the interim loan construction financing and the private equity that's there. And so it's been a combination of both. We have, there was a learning lesson of, you can't keep everything on the books yourself with land. There are land banking opportunities that we've had to explore and we've been successful at. And you have to have all of that in place first before you can commit and say, hey, both the earnest money and the takedown schedules that we're going to be able to execute on and provide for Graham Hart and the developers to be able to get us going in that.
Are you finding now, and I kind of get to look behind the curtain because Sound Capital is the company that they're our parent company and they keep the podcast going, the lights on. And one of the things that I'm seeing across the US right now, there's a pullback in funding. Banks are being told by the Fed to pull back because they're overextended. Have you found yourself in a situation where the bank has said, okay, green light, you're into a project, and then, well, Jordan, I know that you're calling us for your next draw. We can
Yeah.
give you a calendar, but we can't give you the funds. Have you ever found yourselves in that position?
Luckily, no. At the time, there's a lot of builders, and it's no secret. There were a lot of builders up until just the last couple of months who found themselves in an overextended position, right? Coming out of COVID, a lot of builders went very heavily at land acquisition. And now all of a sudden they're looking at land options out ahead of them where they're deciding, hey, I know we have earnest money on this, but we're going to walk it because it just doesn't make sense for us anymore. We were in a position as a company right at that same time when we were leaning into, okay, if we're going to be purchasing land and growing, there's a lot of builders walking away from land options right now and pods that are out in front of them. How do we maximize this? And so without overexposing ourselves, we found ourselves in a position where not necessarily a surplus, but there's a lot of opportunity that we can at least vet and do our due diligence on. And some of them, obviously, it was yeah, man, that's too far outside of our circle on where we're at right now. And I'll go a different direction in a moment, but there was just a lot of opportunity on the ground. Now, one thing that limited us is, hey, we can't look at a position that's over an hour away or an hour away from a personnel standpoint and say that makes sense for us. Because if it's a satellite community, we've got to be mindful of, okay, we need probably two or three communities in that area to host a sales management team and also construction manager, right? And how is that all going to work from an SGA perspective and making sure that we operate efficiently and have enough personnel, but we still are, we're still at a scale where we need to be smart with how we spend, just like any builder at any size. However, at the size we're at, how do we operate efficiently with the correct amount of people for the best bang for our buck?
Interesting in terms of like growth and relationship with capital. I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Scott Menard. You two would get along like a couple school kids.
Yeah.
I'm going to find out if he's going to IBS. You got to
Awesome.
hook up. So his company is Homes Built for America. But prior to that, the company was doing land acquisition, and they would take it to title and ultimately sell off parcels to the D.R. Hortons of the world. That
Hmm.
was their thing. And then when COVID hit, they realized, hey, we're sitting on about 5,000 lots here.
Yeah.
Maybe would it be a good idea that we morph or evolve into being a home builder as well, since we've got the land.
Sure.
And that's what they're doing. So they've got the land and they've got the build. So similar to what you guys, you saw the opportunity, went forward. Just to do a not so subtle introduction to Sound Capital, one of the things that really sets them apart is all they do is fund builders. No couches, no TVs, no cars.
Yeah.
Builders. That's the focus. And when I mentioned this, what's happening across the country, that banks are pulling back and leaving builders high and dry, the money that they lend is put into escrow. So that will never happen. There will never be a sleepless night where a developer has to think,
Yeah.
is that money coming tomorrow?
Hmm.
And because they're so vested, because they're using their own money as well, they want to see the builder succeed.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw that out there because maybe there's a conversation to be had with Sean, but
Yeah. Very
I'll
possible.
throw it out there because now I can say I've earned my keep, Sound Capital. Let's move on. I want to get back to something you said about the marketing that you were doing. And I don't mean to make light of this, but you're doing a makeover, website, everything.
Mhm.
At what point or how do you determine what is fluff versus what is actually productive? Because you can spend thousands on a website that does nothing, but it looks pretty versus, and I'll give you an example. Excuse me. Back in the day when I was selling real estate, everybody has their beautiful signs. And you would join a Remax or a Century 21 or a
Mhm.
Coldwell Banker because you want the power of the brand behind you. But the first thing the realtor would do is he would scrub off everything that's related to the brand and it's their own ugly face out front of a car they can't afford, all that
Sure.
wonderful stuff. What I discovered is if you take an ugly yellow sign, yellow coroplast, and you just write for sale by owner or 10% down carries for X amount per month and a phone number, that ugly yellow sign pulled infinitely more than a beautiful, professionally designed
Yeah.
one. So getting back to the question is how do you cut through the fluff to determine what is actually needed, what works versus lipstick on a pig?
Yeah. Being able to track everything. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Let's start there. So when we started, our website was fantastic in terms of the look of it, right? If you take a look at our website, we fashion ourselves after, we have some brand heroes like Restoration Hardware, Williams Sonoma, classy, elevated, but very clean, simplistic. We're not afraid of white space. You'll see that on our website. Not everything has to be filled up, and we do that intentionally. So where we lacked opportunity on the website was URL structure, pulling in, the opportunity to do meta ads, Google Analytics from an SEO and an AIO standpoint, the opportunity to be able to track, hey, what is driving prospects and traffic to us? Is it bouncing around at the top of the funnel or is it very concentrated? And how do we track what is truly driving everything? Because to your point, the very second you think you've done a great job with a website, you're going to find another reason to spend more money on something. It's a never ending cycle, or at least can be. And so, sitting down at the start of the year or right before the start of the year and being very mindful on, okay, what does the sales and marketing budget look like? What are we going to go after this year? What is the one sole thing that's going to move the needle the most for us? My division president, David, has a great saying. He says, hey, let's keep the main thing the main thing. That is, hey, let's refocus back, what we're doing here to begin with. The opportunity to partner with CallRail, where we could set up, specific phone numbers for maybe a billboard or available signage in the community, you know, setting up certain meta ads that drive everything in web form fills directly to our website and disperses out to the sales team very quickly. It's all about point of reaction. How fast can you reach out to someone after they're reaching out to you for follow up. Speed is the game, and that's the winner. So that's where we really started and started to see immediate benefits is pulling in the opportunity to track data. So we could say, okay, what does the quality look like or the cost per lead? And so we started there.
Let's take what you just said there and put it into a baby step. Here are the next 5 things that I would need to do. So if you were doing it all over again, and let's
Yeah.
look at this as a developer, a production builder who is now just looking to scale.
Mhm.
And once upon a time, their CRM was something like this,
Yeah.
like
Right.
everything's on little bits of paper. What are your suggestions, if you will, that are battle tested, battle
Mhm.
proven that you've discovered that they can implement now? What would be a starting place?
If you're still working in a very rudimentary fashion, like you just said, your sales team has physical registration cards in their office and they're probably jotting down notes on, hey, I called on this day and sent a text and email on these days. Make sure that you're utilizing the CRM that works for your goals and then holding your team accountable to actually utilizing what you're spending to be able to track information because hey, if you're not tracking it, it's not going to work. You need to be able to search, what is working and make sure that your sales team is nurturing those leads and those prospects, far, far, far beyond when they walk into the office. It's the whole until they buy or die concept, firm believer in that. Make sure that they're following up and utilizing the tech that you've spent and invested money on. I would start there. Number 2, making sure your prospects and your traffic can easily find you. There's no roadblocks that you are accidentally or not knowing that you're putting in place and that you're not blind to those. So making sure that you surround yourselves with folks who are going to give you very direct intentional feedback and, hire the right people, you know, hire slow, fire fast. And this goes into your trade relationships and vendors as well is I'm I try to be very mindful on, hey, we're not going to save pennies on the front end to, burn ourselves by dollars in the back. On let's invest up front. Let's be very intentional on why we're doing it. And then if we're worried about spend later, we can sit back and reevaluate, but let's not forget why we did it in the first place. So that's exactly where I would start.
Let's talk about the sales team for a moment. At what point do you decide that you need an internal sales team that you're going to train and manage versus what a lot of builders will do is they will look at a real estate company and they'll either partner with or hire that company to be on site to sell their properties. Have you gone both routes like in your pedigree as you've evolved? Have you tried both and which one do you think works the best?
So I have not. So I've always come from builders who always had an internal dedicated sales team. And each builder to each their own. And quite frankly, in some markets, that is kind of the norm. Outside of Dallas Fort Worth, I'm part of the Jeff Shore Roundtable, and we get to meet a lot of really great sales leaders across different markets in the United States. And if you ask someone from a different market, maybe out in Tennessee, that's what they know and that's all they know. And so they've partnered with third-party real estate firms and real estate agents or brokers to man the sales offices. I've just had the experience from the builders that I've worked with and here at Graham Hart where we always have a dedicated sales team that work for Graham Hart. If they were a real estate agent at some point in their life prior to, we respectfully ask them to, put their real estate license on hold or hang it up while they're working for us and so they are dedicated to working only for Graham Hart.
Interesting point because not to bash the industry because I are one, but there is a temptation to be selling other properties while you're in a sales center
Yeah,
because it's easier to sell something that's existing versus trying to conceptualize to people what it's going to look like.
sure.
So I would consider realtors a necessary evil, maybe for a builder that's starting out that
I
needs, and then maybe evolve into a sales team. But again, I don't
yes.
want to say anything disparaging against the industry. Just new home sales is a completely different beastie.
Uh-huh. I would offer you this. There are a lot of builders who think a certain way about real estate agents and brokers. We happen to be a builder where the more the merrier. We want to operate and work with as many real estate agents as possible and include them in the transaction if they're working with these clients because quite frankly, they're part of it. They are very much involved, and we make sure that we cater to the agents, keep them involved in every single communication from start to finish if it's on a build job, because there's a lot of agents who, for one reason or another, have had poor experiences with builders. And we just make sure day one, we want to make sure that they understand, hey, we're here to partner with you and not be a roadblock to finding your clients a home.
Cater, that's a good word. That's a good jumping point. I'll extend that into catering. What do you do to celebrate with the people that are buying your home? Because you mentioned something right at the very beginning. One of
Yeah.
the things that kind of leaned you into going to Graham Hart Homes was the fact that they were working with a third time buyer
Mhm.
to help them make that sale come true. So is there anything that you guys do that distinctly separates you from the competition in terms of how you're dealing with your buyers after they've purchased the home?
Yeah. I love this and I'm very proud of what we do. So, yes, let me have the opportunity to talk about it. So, we're here at our corporate office. One of the great things is that our title company that we partner with is in the same parking lot. And so it affords us the opportunity and we rolled this out about a year and a half ago to say, hey, whenever there's a closing that happens here at the title company, two of our executive team in the corporate office are always going to walk over, hand keys, hand a homeowner gift, ask a lot of really great questions because we want to know genuinely, how was your experience? How was the sales team, the construction manager on site? How was the home orientation and sign off? And we also want to let them know, not only is it the most exciting time, and selfishly, whenever I get to hand keys over, that's the favorite part of the whole experience, is being able to do that, and see the excitement. And the real estate agent always is taking pictures of it, and it's just such a great experience that they have an opportunity to treasure forever. But then also importantly, after they move in, this is where you have the opportunity to separate yourself from other builders, because a lot of other builders out there will forget that they have now moved into one of your homes and they are living there full time. And so we remind them at the closing table, hey, both the sales and the construction staff over the next 30 days is going to be reaching out to you multiple times to make sure that things are smooth sailing as you transition into the home. You're now using the showers, you're now using the fireplace. A lot of things that you may or may not have seen at the final walkthrough and the sign off at the home, could transpire now that you're using it and living in it full time. And we want you to know that we're here for you, even after the closing, even after you've signed the check and you've seen our brake lights, driving away from the home. We're still here. We have a warranty team dedicated to you providing service. We also follow that up with a 45-day short-term survey that we have some very specific questions, not only about willingness to recommend, obviously, dedicated departments on how that experience was. But then we have some product and specification questions that we like to ask, only so we can keep a pulse on, hey, what's working, what's not working, and what used to work that's not working anymore. How are we going to evolve as a company, both from a dedicated service, but also, features inside the home, technology, things that people are loving on or not loving on, and how do we shift?
It seems that's the perfect opportunity to shine and show the essence of who you are as a company. You said brake lights. I'd extend that further. They see the brake lights, but they're also feeling the gravel hitting them in the face as you accelerate away. Because many builders, once they've handed the key, I don't want to hear that
Yeah,
there's a crack here because now I have to send somebody back to
that's
fix
right.
that.
La 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 la. You signed off. You signed off. Yeah, that's not the experience we're trying to provide.
I see that as the opportunity to create that wow experience
Mhm.
because it's akin to you can go to a really fine restaurant and sit down. Here's a wonderful meal. So you've got, let's call it the service and the experience. And the service can be a product, but in this
Yeah,
case, restaurant. You're sitting there with Becca. The kids have a babysitter. This is your date night.
yeah,
It's been a long, stressful week. You've really been looking forward to this at the table. And this waiter comes out and he's just sterling sense of humor. Jordan, here's what the menu is for today. And then he looks around the corner. He says, but I got to warn you, don't order the fish. I was in the kitchen. Don't order the fish. Right.
yes,
And now you feel like you're on the inside because this waiter is sharing with you. So you've got the service, let's call it the service, and the experience is the meal comes, the waiter was wonderful, and when you leave, both things came together.
Yeah.
You become a raving fan. But if one of those things was off, like the meal could be great, but the waiter comes, his fly's undone, he's got stains all over himself, he has just ruined it for you.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that you guys have nailed it, that you realize that you have to provide the service, which is the home, but you have to now extend that to the experience that they'll remember because they become your raving fans.
Yeah, yeah, such a great point. Most everybody knows the book Unreasonable Hospitality. It's the whole, hey, greasy water dog, New York hot dog experience. How do you do something that is completely off the wall, unique to that experience, and provide that so it's really, a Polaroid moment in their life that they're always going to remember. One of the reasons why I really encourage our sales team, it doesn't take much encouragement because they love doing it, is they'll drive from their offices to the closing table and come, provide a personalized gift because they've gotten to know the families really well. And it's, how are you going to make this experience not a commodity experience? They're not purchasing a box with carpet in it. There are some builders that operate high volume. This is what we're going to do. It is, hey, we're providing a lifestyle change for these folks. This may be a season of life change that they're going through, get to know their kids, their pets, their life on where they're coming from, because they are going to be living in your community that you're in, homeowner referral opportunities, homeowner appreciation events in the future. All of that is just really important to us because, again, we're at a size where, number one, we can. Number two, we should. Everybody should. But it's also fun, to get to know your homeowners and also see the social media platform engagement with folks who are living in your home already, not just the folks who are shopping for a Graham Hart home.
If I looked up community in Webster's, it would basically say it's a clump of dwellings put together. What do you guys actually do to foster a sense
Mm.
of community?
So, up until this point, we've always had a lot of communities where we were the solo builder inside the neighborhood, right? A lot of them we may have self developed. Quite a few of them we've had partnerships with developers that are local here to the Colleyville area. And we've always wanted to make sure that, hey, our developments from the curb, coming in really is a sense of pride of ownership. You want, as a homeowner, to know that you purchased something and you are providing a community for your family that you're proud not only yourself to drive into every day, but if you're having a get together, a Super Bowl party at your house, yeah, I'm excited for my friends to drive into our community and park right in front of the curb and come in. And I want to show off my house and give them the tour and all of that. So, with that in mind, that's how we run at development decisions, amenities, how we manage the lifestyle within the community, and go at it from a sense of what is going to be important to the homeowner, not only immediately, but long term. How does this community build out in 10 years? What are the trees going to look like? What are the trails going to look like? Are you going to know your neighbors? How do we entice folks to actually leave their home, sit in the driveway on a Friday night and let their kids ride their bikes around in the street in front, and have that really neat experience that you never want to leave, right? So I think it's, if you look at it from that fashion, a lot of the decisions are pretty easy to make.
I got to say, you must be doing all the right things because since you've come on board and you're part of the story now, the Graham Hart story, that as the chapters are unfolding, you've gone for double digits and you're now on the cusp of crossing over that mark to triple digits in terms of production. What do you see as the future for Graham Hart Home? So if you were looking out, and I know this sounds kind of cliche, but there's so much happening in terms of technology, AI, advancement, labor shortages. Looking out into the next 5 years, where do you see your guys going? And more importantly, what do you see as an industry happening over the next 5 years?
Sure. Okay. Lots to unpack, but a lot to talk about. So, this last year, we celebrated 30 years in business. That was a huge milestone for our company, May of 2025. This year, our fiscal 26, we're going to cap 100 homes. And when that happens, we are going to celebrate like crazy because it is something that we have been pursuing. And now we have the land opportunity and the runway to be able to do that. And it's just out there in front of us waiting to deliver. Now it's up to the sales team, no pressure, to sell the homes and the construction guys to finish them and close them, and our warranty team to service them. And But, 100 homes will be a really big thing for us as a company because it kind of moves us over to the next echelon of, okay, 250's next, or 300's
Yeah.
next or whatever it is. But, if you look out 5 years from now, we already have a land pipeline through the end of 2028 by 2028 to be able to close 300 homes in 1 year. And so we're looking at, okay, this year, let's focus on what's in front of us, but be mindful of what's to come and strategically set ourselves up for to win, on what we want to achieve. But I want to take it back a moment because to the topic of, hey, you want to scale, you want to grow, but you don't want to lose sight of who you are as a company. There is a big, big jump from 100 homes to 250. Everything changes. Your personnel, your SG&A, how you go about making operational decisions, how you manage your capital and what you do systematically to look after the health of your company. Because unfortunately, there's been too many examples out there of companies that grew too quickly and fell apart for one reason or another, right? But grew too quickly and they saw it and they ran after it, but then they weren't being mindful of how they got there. And so I think you need to be very, very careful and systematic in how you do that.
I think that becomes the death of a thousand cuts. It's the little things that you forget or neglect along the way that are now going to come back and bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
So even taking it back to when we were talking about the definition of community and what you guys do, it's almost impossible to do that if you're, let's say, undermanned
Hmm.
and you're trying to grow at scale. It's that community will suffer, and word of mouth, reputation, everything else suffers as a result of it.
Yeah. You got to be careful of what you throw money at thinking it's going to solve or provide a solution, right? Because it's easy to, again, like I said, run at the sharp, flashy, fun, exciting things, but if it doesn't provide results for the company and the long-term goals as to where you want to be as a company, man, you've got to be careful on what you do and those decisions that you make. It might not be a healthy decision for the company.
Do you figure right now you're fairly warmed up, fairly loose? I'm going to do a lane change here. I just want to make sure
Yep,
you're on the same page. Okay. I
I'm
want to play
ready.
something called rapid fire.
Oh boy.
And
Okay, here we go.
I'm going to ask you a series of questions and then you end this. And I don't want you to think about it. Like, don't take out a Rubik's Cube and a calculator.
Okay.
I'll ask you the sentence, fill in the end.
Okay.
Ready? Okay. Private production builders get into trouble when they,
Overthink things.
good. The fastest way to kill absorption in a new community is to,
Get too efficient too fast.
if a builder is over leveraged, the first sales sign or signal is they see is
Oof. Over leverage. Sorry, that's not going to be a quick one. A silent sales team.
interesting. Let's expand on that. What do you mean?
So over leveraged in the way that I take that is if a company is over leveraged and pouring money into solutions and trying to make a company or let's take it back to try to find success in a community where they haven't been able to find success. A lot of times, if you have a great executive management, they will reach out and lean into the salesperson who's in the field for feedback. If the salesperson loses trust with the executive team and the executive team says, okay, we thank you very much for your feedback, but we're going to go a different direction, then the salesperson is going to get silent when they're asked for feedback on future endeavors or buyer demographic shifts or product shifts because they already see the writing on the wall. Whatever I say isn't going to matter because you guys are going to do whatever you want to do anyway. And so, hopefully I'm answering that question correctly in terms of what I'm thinking through over leverage. But, that's what I've seen, unfortunately, a few times where they're being asked, they being the sales or the construction team in the field on their feedback and what they're seeing. But ultimately that's not taken into consideration, when a strategy is made.
I think that we should underline that point because your focus all along through this conversation that we had is as a sales leader, you're trying to foster community is a word that we use for your customers, but you're also doing that with your sales team and actually the
Hmm.
whole company. You've got a culture and you're fostering that community. It seems that when that communication breaks down, what you've done is created an exodus potential that people are going to go where they're appreciated. Remember, it's not about money, it's about the leadership. And if they don't feel appreciated, they're not part of the team. It's like, hey, Jordan, thanks for the cookies, but I'm going next door.
Hmm. Yeah. Thanks for the cookies, but that doesn't make up for the last 12 months of you asking me questions, me providing feedback. And it's like, yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Right.
You gave me cookies, but you also added sour milk. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
knowing that, hey, when I ask you a question, I legitimately am looking for your insight because you're the professional out in the field. I've entrusted you with a multi-million dollar brick and mortar, and we need to deliver X amount of homes on an annual basis. And this is what your sales and marketing plan is. And I trust them to take ownership of that and be held accountable and deliver.
I don't want to say doom and gloom, but this kind of makes me think of a sideways question here. Everything so far has been like something out of a fairy tale. There's been this wonderful evolution. You've gone from one job to the other. Everywhere you've gone, you've brought success, dandelions and wine. It's been blessed. Has there ever been a time in that evolution where you just thought your back is against the wall, you're staring into the abyss, and you're thinking, "Man, I don't see any way out."
The answer, the short answer is yes. The question is, which instance do we want to talk about? So let's take it back to 2005. And you know what? This is such a prime personal example of me being young and green in the industry, and a great reason as to why it's good to hire, to some extent, folks who quote unquote don't know any better, right? So coming into the industry 2005, I'm working for Pulte Homes, as I mentioned in the past, and I'm in this community called Everman Park, Southwest Fort Worth. And starting prices were in the hundreds, 110s at the time. 110 to 150 was about the sweet spot of the community. And I entered the marketplace at the time, looking back now, right at the crest of the roller coaster. Just, everything was gravy, everything was great. Everyone was loving on each other, and it was such a fun industry. And I am just, looking through everything with rose colored glasses. And then you hit that crest in 2006, 2007 hits. But because I was new to the industry, you have this eternal optimism of, man, not only do I want this to work, but I have to make it work, and I have a family that I need to provide for. I have a career that I need to kick off and start, and I don't have any other options. It's not like I can go call my buddy at a different company and say, hey, are you hiring? Is the insight better over there? That there's no relationships, true relationships in our industry established yet. And so, as far as a backup against the wall from a sales seat, it was you're left with no other option but to not only meet but exceed your sales goals. And I think because of that mindset at the time, I was able to not only ride out, but really enjoy and flourish in what could have otherwise been, a really tough time for folks. And then not only that, you take experiences like that in the trenches and they, multiply over the years as you're doing this and selling homes. You have a lot of those experiences that you can draw from and that you can coach to. And inevitably salespeople are going to share their warrior stories with each
Yeah.
other over time. And that's a lot of fun. Got plenty of them. But let me shift for a moment, going over to, hey, have I had my back up against the wall in the leadership realm of this industry? And yeah, I think there's been a couple of instances. When I first started at Graham Hart Home Builder, it was October 2023, and interest rates had just spiked at 8.5% the month that I started at the company. And so not only am I having to try to navigate new relationships, build a rapport with my sales team, also hold some folks accountable. I did have to make some changes to the sales team pretty early on, all in an environment where, 6 months prior, interest rates were 3.5 to 4%, and so it's for a lot of different reasons, a whole different world that we're navigating in, whole different company, whole different sales team. And so, luckily, I was able to get in there very quickly and make some changes, and quite frankly, because I was fully transparent with the team on, hey, this is who I foresee, the team, this is where I foresee the company going. And this is what I would like to do and achieve with you. This is not a talking to you. This is a we're all in this together. And I want you to be in it with me. Who's in? It's that moment. And, the team has really pulled through and pushed forward and delivered and couldn't be more proud of who we have on and where we're going. And so I would say those are two different instances right there. I think personally, and then also from a sales leadership standpoint, that come to mind first off.
It's a metaphor that I probably use all too often, but rough seas make for good sailors.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, okay, buckle up. I got a few more, and
Okay.
we're approaching the runway. We're about to put the landing gear down. So here we go. When I finally get a rare hour to myself, the thing I enjoy doing the most is
Sauna, working out, and reading
wow, good one. The one place that always helps me reset, reflect, or think clearly is
in front of my family.
a book, movie, or quote that stayed with me longer than I expected it would.
Lonnie Main, Red Shoes Living. I actually have right there in the background, but
Wow.
great book.
If someone wanted to understand me more and what matters to me, what would they need to know?
Oof. It would be we need to have a sit down conversation. But what do they need to know? I am I have a lot of things that I love. My family, music, and acting from a long time ago. I was a theater brat, and I think that life is a stage now. It's kind of funny how things come full circle. I think that is always been a part of me and always will be. And my interest in cars and in modification. But I'll leave it at that.
Okay, last one. What a wonderful and thoughtful gift. When I opened the package, I found a
Willy Wonka gold ticket. Not random.
okay,
You're gonna have to ask some context on that one.
okay, I can't leave that one alone. Come on, unwrap, unwrap.
So, a buddy of mine, Chad Sandstregren, I'm a part of his betterment circle, and he sent out such a thoughtful gift the other day. It was a box that had a couple of really neat kind of merch and swag items inside of it. And one of the items was kind of your Willy Wonka gold ticket, look to it. But it was really an introduction to, what I'm getting involved in and what 2026 is going to look like. And it was so fun to see. It was a very thoughtful, fun way to, introduce into that. So what came to mind?
Way cool. One last question, my friend, and then we'll put the plane down. And this is one. It's going to tap into your Christian values, make you think for a bit. And if I cross over any lines, I don't mean to. So tell me to stop at any point. But this is something that isn't going to happen for decades and decades and decades and decades. Underscore that many, many, many years. But one morning you wake up and you're dead, and you find yourself at Heaven's Gate, standing next to St. Peter. And he's got an iPad because he's been following the technology trends as well. And he's scrolling through this iPad and he's watching little video vignettes of your life. And he sees one and he kind of smiles. And there's one with you, with Becca and the kids. And he kind of chuckles to himself. There's a few others that he looks at, not so cheerful, keeps going. And then he looks you right in the eye and says, Jordan, not today. Not today. There's something you haven't done yet. What's that something you haven't done yet?
Okay, we'll go deep. I haven't finished what I started out to do as a dad to my three girls. As I'm standing there at Heaven's Gate and St. Peter's, standing there looking at the videos and saying, wow, that's really neat. I see videos and what's important to me of him looking at me, you know, being a dad and a good father and, showing my girls what it is like to be a good human being and how they can be powerful and have an impact on the world themselves someday. And they already are. But, when I see I haven't seen it through is to see them walk down the aisle, to see them have their own kids, to be a grandparent, to their kids, to have the memories and the life experiences that my parents have been able to experience with us. Yeah, that would be my answer.
You had me tearing up there for a moment, you bastard. Yeah. My friend, I think we've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything that we haven't touched on?
No, this has been so much fun. Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. Great conversation.
Well, I appreciate that. Jordan, if they want to find out more about you and Graham Hart Homes, they should go where?
Yeah, sure. Jordan Brown on LinkedIn. I'm very active. You can find me there. Please add me. Love a conversation and direct messages that come out of that. Also, www.grahamhart.com. That's our company website. Would love you to link and take a look at what we have to offer. It's just exciting to see what we have coming out of the ground. Instagram, jbrown_tx. We're on all the social media platforms. Our family, we're very active. So would love to connect.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Are you guys hiring?
Yes. As I
Okay.
said, we're growing. So we're always looking for wonderful folks to join the family.
Yeah, I'm not shameless. I thought I'd just throw that in for you. There you go. My friend, thanks for taking time out today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. Right back at you.
Let's end this. I'll end it by saying to be continued.
All right. Love it.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.